Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a movie review. This movie is a horror film from the USA, English language, released in the year 2016, directed by Mark Pavia, and this film is called Fender. So Fender is about this young girl. She's just got a license, and unfortunately one day she has a car crash. So it's a very minor accident. This guy accidentally ran into the back of her, and so he gets out of his car, he exchanged details with this female, but little does this female know this guy is in fact a serial killer, and he picks off his victims by doing this. He runs into them, gets their information, and he knows exactly where the victim is. So this woman goes back to her house. She's grounded because of what's happened, and so her parents leave for the weekend and she's stranded inside. So her friends come by unannounced one evening, but little do they know they're lambs to the slaughter, because their house is going to be laid siege upon very soon by this killer, who is hell-bent on making these young people the next victims on his list. So that whether or not he does dispatch these unsuspecting teenagers, or in fact the teenagers can get out of the grips of the killer and get away, is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Fender. Coming into the film, I'm not a massive fan of slasher films, so for that reason I wasn't really giving this a really fair go. I was expecting to hate it more than I'd like it, but after watching the film I will say that I got something out of it. It's not a movie that blew me away, it's a very forgettable film, but it's still a fun film for what it is. And so if you are a fan of slasher films, then maybe you get something out of it that I didn't. But for me, not being a slasher fan, I still thought it was passable, and I actually thought that was 90 minutes fairly well spent, and I would recommend for you to go out there and see it yourself as well. But whether or not you're going to remember anytime soon, I don't know, is because it doesn't have that lasting quality, is because a lot of this film you have seen it done before. So it's a very cliched sort of horror film, very cliched slasher that does follow very similar slasher tropes. But the best part of this film is that it does pay a lot of respect to the original Halloween. Now the original Halloween wasn't so much about the gore, it was about the anticipation of something very bad happening. It was about the great atmosphere and the eeriness that really surrounds you. And I thought Fender had that similar sort of atmosphere. It was more about the anticipation, it was more about very patient build-up, and it was more all about great camera angles, very eerie visuals, very good soundtrack that helps contribute to that eeriness, that really sucks you into the film, and you know something really bad is going to happen. So the overall evening where this carnage takes place is very stormy, and so it does give you that outer world experience, kind of like you're living a nightmare. You're right in next to these victims as this killer is trying to get inside the house. And for the majority of the film, you don't really see this killer. You think that the killer might be there, but the Mark Pavia actually does play with your mind quite a bit in this movie, and that's something I really appreciate. It's because slasher these days, a lot of viewers want great kills and a great killer, and that's really nothing else. And that you're basically waiting for someone to be chopped up in a horrible way, and it's the creative ways of the kills that actually make a slasher film these days. But in this film, it's about who is going to be picked off and when is this killer going to come about. When is he going to make himself seen? And so it is definitely a case of what's lurking in the shadows as opposed to what you're actually seeing. So I really appreciated that, and as I said, that is by far the best part of this movie. Production wise, it is very good. It does have a lot of patience, and I thought Mark Pavia is very talented at what he actually does. But unfortunately the film does fall short. As I said, this is a slasher that follows all the cliches. You've got this people being picked off one by one. You've got a very unconvincing villain. At the start of the film he is quite menacing, but he wears this gimp, almost like a gimp suit, and it just didn't really do anything as far as intimidation is concerned. He had this boring weapon, and the kills are very boring as well. So after you get over the great build-up, when it's time to actually showcase the film's main attraction, which is the slasher element, I thought that was a little bit weak, and I thought the payoff the lead-up and the build-up wasn't complemented by the payoff, and the payoff really let the lead up down a little bit. And that to me was the biggest problem, is that if it had great kills, it actually could have been very memorable, but because the kills aren't really that good, the killer really does lack a lot of personality, you just think to yourself, okay, this is a run-of-the-mill kind of slasher film. I really like the way it finished, but then there's a lot of unrealistic moments that are very evident in a lot of slasher films that need to be unrealistic in order so the film can progress. So yeah, it's definitely not an original film. It's a very cliche-ridden slasher film, but if you are a die-hard slasher fan, I would say go out there and see Fender. There were moments that I really liked. As I said, the build-up was great, and then when it comes time to reveal itself, that was where it weighs itself down a little bit. But then at the end of the film I thought, okay, that was a decent film, but it's definitely not a movie that I'm going to rush out to say to people to go and see. So overall for Fender, not too bad. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.